Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over an example, another example of testing an argument for validity, and by using Aristotle's 6 rules. But what I'm going to do first, well, what I have to do first, what you have to do first, is put this thing into logical form, put the premises and the conclusion into logical form. And so my first premise is every dog runs. Second premise, Steve runs. And then we have the conclusion, so Steve is a dog. Okay. So, first premise, I have to put this into logical form. Every dog runs. Now, is this an A, E, I, or O? So I have to ask myself. And so my intuition is telling me this is an A statement. Okay, so I'm going to make it look like an A statement. So every dog runs really means using our form for the A statement. I'm going to change the every to all. Okay. All dogs are, I'm just going to scoot this over, that which run. Okay. So every dog runs can turn into, when you put it into logical form, all dogs are that which run. Okay. So when you have the word every, most likely it means all. Okay. And we had all dogs run. What did we need to do to turn it into logical form? I have to expose this verb right here. Remember, to put something in logical form, you need the verb to be. In other words, you need is or are or am. Okay? And how do we get that? We have to use the relative clause. In other words, you have to introduce the words that which or that which is. Here I use, remember, TW stands for that which. Okay, so this should just be review for you when I do this right now. So all dogs are that which run. I had to use that which run in order for this to be evident, because every sentence you say has this. It's just not, you just can't see it. It's not explicit most of the time. Okay, when I do this, when I add the that which or that which is, it makes this explicit. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my subject term and my predicate term into brackets. Okay, now I'm going to deal with this one right here. Steve runs. So, is this an, I have to ask myself, you have to ask yourself, is this an E, I, O, A? Which one? It's an A statement. Okay, Steve runs. Okay, I said this before, but it bears repeating. When you have an individual person or an individual thing in the world, okay, some sort of, some sort of proper noun you can even say, like Steve or like me, Philip, or Bill, okay, that's going to make this what we call a singular proposition. Okay, and we have to ask ourselves, are we talking about all Steve? Are we talking about a part of Steve? Right? If Steve's arm got cut off, and you wouldn't be referring to his arm as Steve. There's only one Steve. This Steve we're talking about in this sentence. Okay? So when you have something like this in a sentence, this is an A proposition because you're talking about all of that individual person, even though there's only one of them. Okay, so we would say all Steve. Now what do we have to do? Is it done for logical form? No, it's not done. I don't see the verb to be. We have to expose that. How do I expose that? I have to turn this into a relative clause by adding that which or that which is. So you just have to say it. Okay, so all Steve is that which runs. Okay. and I put that in brackets, and I put Steve in brackets. Okay, so now I have to, all I have is this one right here, this conclusion. And I already know, right? I already know what this is. This is an A statement. So, all Steve is a dog. Okay. Now I can choose to say all Steve is that which is a dog, but I don't need to do that. It's already clear. Okay, so I'm going to put brackets. I'm going to put the subject term and the predicate term in the brackets. Okay. Now what you should do next, what are we going to do next? Now that I put this thing into logical form, I'm going to identify the minor term and the major term, and I'm going to identify the minor premise and the major premise. And I'm also going to identify the middle term. I'm just going to do that before we even get into the rules. Okay? This right here, the subject term of the conclusion, you should know already. It is the minor term. Okay? The predicate term in the conclusion is the major term. Okay? So now all I have to do, I could do this. I could find the middle term with either one of these. Okay, I'm just going to use this one, the minor term. All I'm going to do is find the minor term in the premises. It's right here. Okay, Steve. There it is. So that tells me that this proposition right here is the minor premise. Okay, this is the minor premise. And the other term in this premise is the middle term. Okay, so that which runs is the middle term, and I'm just going to put an M over it to indicate that it's the middle term. Now remember, a term just doesn't have to be one word. Remember that. A term can be however long somebody wants it to be. Of course, that wouldn't be good for arguing, because you want your terms short and sweet, because that lets the other person know that, and you know that you know what you're talking about. But this is the middle term, and we see it's also right here. Okay, it's right here. So we see the middle term. Now all I'm going to do is, now I'm ready. Now I'm going to go over the 6 rules of validity, and if it passes all these rules, then it is valid. It has good form. But if it doesn't pass one, then I can stop, because this thing is not valid. Okay, so the first rule is that syllogism, which is what this is right here. By the way, syllogism, I know it's a funny word, but it just means an inference, like you're making an inference. That's what we do when we go from 2 premises to a conclusion, is we're doing something that's called making an inference. So rule number 1 says we can only have 3 terms. Let's see. Dogs, dog, same thing, right? That which runs, run, that's it, same thing. Steve and Steve. We have 3 terms. Next one, it's also a pretty easy one. 3 propositions. 1, 2, 3. Okay, next one, third rule number, so it passes that. So rule number 3, the middle term must be distributed at least once. Where's our middle term? Here it is. Let's check it out in this proposition right here. All dogs are that which run. This is an A proposition. So if you see the chart on distribution, in the A proposition, is the is the predicate term distributed? In other words, is there a little U or a D over the predicate term in an A proposition? So this is an A. It's an A proposition. And this is the predicate term. Is it distributed or undistributed? If you look at a chart on this, you're going to see there's a U there, because it's undistributed. Undistributed. I'll just put it there. So we didn't find it there. Remember, the middle term must be distributed at least once. In other words, the middle term must be used universally at least once. And the reason why that is so is because the middle term is the mediator. It is the important term that is connecting the two other terms in the proposition. Because remember, there's only three terms in an argument. So the middle term is connecting the other two terms. So the middle term must be used universally at least once. It must be used very generally at least once, so it has the power and it's broad enough to connect the other two terms. In this proposition, it's not used universally. It's undistributed, and undistributed means particular. So let's check the other premise. This one right here. All Steve is that which runs. This is an A proposition as well, right? And here it's the predicate term in the A proposition, and if we look at our chart, is the predicate term in the A proposition distributed or undistributed? It's undistributed. We just went over this. This is the same as this premise right here. So this middle term is not distributed in either of the premises. So that means that this argument does not pass rule number 3. And so this argument would be invalid. Okay? But it's not enough just to say it's invalid. If you know the reason why it's invalid, we need to state that. So you would say this is invalid. It is the fallacy of the undistributed middle.